I think Sea Slide Galaxy should have had like 2 or 3 stars maximum. It seems like when they moved beyond the dome of the bedroom and made it towards the engine room, they kinda started to squeeze in some of the simpler ideas. Or at the very least, that's the case with 2 out of 3 of the large galaxies in that dome. While I thought Goldleaf Galaxy was good and stood out on its own, and in many ways I found it to be more enjoyable than Honeyhive Galaxy, at the end of the day they did kind of take the easy way out by making it a mirror of Honeyhive Galaxy, or at least using Honeyhive Galaxy as the base model. Sea Slide Galaxy is a bit different. It doesn't necessarily feel the exact same as the other stages do, but there's a lot here that feels a bit repetitive. It's effectively the second large water galaxy in the game, and while it is a ring of water, which is not what Beach Ball Galaxy was, it borrows the same theming. It's got the blue skies, the sand, the green grass, the palm trees, and it even uses the exact same music. Which I forgot to mention in the previous segment, but Goldleaf Galaxy also uses the same music as Honeyhive. But in the case of Sea Slide, the stage is actually much more unique. There are other smaller galaxies with water paths like this, so it's not exactly the first time you'll see this type of design in the game, but it is the first time for a large galaxy. But there's an added issue in that they decided to bring back the penguins on this one as well, which just adds more to that samey feeling you might get with Beach Ball Galaxy. But at the end of the day, I could more or less forgive that. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal when games have early levels and late levels match up to one another. I think it's a fun way to show what more you can do with a stage when the player is more skilled, and I think Goldleaf and Honeyhive is a very good example of that. The main issue I have with Sea Slide is actually the missions within it. The stars feel way too repetitive to one another. And the issue is with stages as linear as this one, you're always going to have a whole ton of redundancy, which means it's on the developer to make sure that the actual objectives feel different. That way you can better mask that feeling of redundancy and a player can leave the stage happy feeling like they accomplished 5 different tasks. Or I guess 6 if you're counting the purple coins. But that being said, I do know there were a few stars in this one that I did enjoy more than I expected I would enjoy. So seeing as how this is a sandbox level, a linear sandbox level, I'm gonna borrow what I did in Mario 64 for this one. I want to go through the missions and I want to count how redundant each one of them feels. And at the very end of this segment, I want to determine if that redundancy is enough to make me feel like this stage is a step back in the game. If you remember in the previous segment, I've basically said the game has gotten better along as I moved on. And it's not to say that I think that every stage has been better than the one before it, but so far every galaxy has been either in the same tier as the one before it, or a step up. So while I might not like Goldleaf Galaxy as much as I like Freeze Flame Galaxy and Dusty Dune Galaxy, it still feels like it's kind of in the same ballpark. And those 3 together are better than the ones that came before. And again, I previously thought that Goldleaf might be the first stage that goes down a tier as well, but after giving it a closer look, I determined it was good enough. So let's go through the stars here in Sea Slide Galaxy and see if we can determine the same type of outcome. Mission 1 is going after Guppy, and as soon as you land on the opening area, you'll feel like you're in Beach Ball Galaxy over again. You'll see the penguins complaining about somebody that's causing problems, and when you go and speak to Captain Toad, he'll let you know that it's the hooligan over there. This fella is named Guppy. He kinda has like this mob vibe going for him. He acts like he owns the place. He may be an orca, but his design reminds me of the dolphins from Super Mario World. When you speak to him, he'll let you know that the sea is his. And if you want to prove otherwise, you have to swim through a trail of 8 rings that he leaves behind. So you basically just follow him and swim through the rings. Honestly, this is pretty easy. You just gotta follow him along, and even if you fall behind, the rings stick around for quite a bit, allowing you a chance to catch up. There's also a shell that you can grab on your way that'll speed things up. When you get through the final ring, Guppy will be pretty impressed with you and you'll get your star. After collecting that star, a comet appeared, and it was time to race against Cosmic Mario. Can you guess the route that was taken during that race? Did you guess almost the exact same route? If so, yeah, it kind of feels the exact same. It's a smaller segment, you're not going around the entire galaxy. There are red shells spread throughout too to make it a little bit more fun. You're still aiming for rings, except the rings will give you a speed burst, and the final portion does take place on land. But at the end of the day, through both of these stars, you basically just got in the water and swim around. You didn't really search for anything. In both cases, you were trying to move as fast as you can, and for the most part, it did feel a bit like retracing the previous objective. All in all, it just felt very redundant. I feel like I could have completed both of those objectives at the same time. After the comet star, you get to go back in to grab the next star, which is technically the second star in the stage. The mission title is Faster Than a Speeding Penguin. Can you guess what this objective is about? Did you guess yet another race across basically the same path? Well, you're kind of right, except we start in a different area this time. Now, in fairness, this one is a little bit more intense than both the first star and the Cosmic Mario Race, but it honestly does not add enough to make it feel unique. If anything, I think they should have gotten rid of the first 2 stars and it should have just been this one. Or at least change up the Cosmic Mario Race. You could maybe argue that the star with Guppy was just to get your swimming comfort in order, and then this race with the penguins is the one that speeds things up. But the problem is when you have a race against penguins that already exists, does it really make any sense to have a race against Cosmic Mario in the same one? Especially when you consider there's so much more you can do with this stage. Genuinely, I think the Guppy star should have been something else entirely. And that's largely because when you go through the 3rd star, you see just how much there is above the water in this level. The 3rd star is a Silver Star Challenge. You need to find and collect the 5 silver stars. But it's more than just a scavenger hunt. When you first get started, you'll notice on the tiny island ahead of you is a B Mario power-up. You'll have to use it, carefully fly upwards, land on the cloud, and make it towards the silver star. Obviously, if you fall into the water, you lose your power-up, so you gotta be very careful. You'll want to make your way towards the next island. You can technically fly there, but if you land in the water, you can grab the new bee mushroom when you get there. Which I think is a little bit lame because I think it would have been more enjoyable if you had to carry the same power-up over towards that island. But either way, once you get to that island, you may notice a cannon in the corner. You're supposed to blast off and land on the Toad Brigade ship and use the pool stars to get the next silver star. After that, you head over to the next island. Again, if you lose your power-up, you can just grab a different one. Hover your way up to the top of the palm tree and you'll be able to collect your 3rd silver star. At which point you'll be able to take a launch star back to the beginning of the stage and effectively work your way backwards towards the tree. This part's a bit more tricky, but it's also more fun. Moving your way upwards and making sure you don't run out of stamina while avoiding spiders is an okay challenge. At that point, you kind of got to figure out how to make it to the big section in the middle. It's not the most obvious thing to notice, but it's also not terribly difficult to find. You're meant to spin the nozzle that's in front of Guppy and it'll create a path for you. This nozzle could easily be one of those things where a player doesn't really think much of and skips past it, but I think that's part of the fun puzzle-solving charm to figure out how to get to the middle of the galaxy. And once you get over there, you can just go to the top and grab the 5th silver star. And then for some reason, they'll send this star all the way back to the starting platform, which is kind of weird because you can just take the next 2 launch stars to make your way towards it. Either way, you'll have your 3 stars, you'll have your comet star, so all that's left now is the hidden star. In the same mission we just completed, you have to go to the area where the cannon was. You'll likely remember there was a Hungry Luma standing right by the cannon. The Hungry Luma would like 40 star bits, and that should be fairly easy to grab in the area around you. It'll transform in the sky, and you'll take the cannon and have to aim towards it and blast up there. And as soon as you get there, it's go time. You gotta run around, make the correct jumps, platforms will disappear as you maneuver, and you have to collect every single one of the music notes without falling to your demise. So I think stars like this are really important to the Mario formula. I've heard criticisms where people like to say they stick out like a sore thumb, in the sense that it's this random challenge in the sky that's not really relevant to the entire stage. And to an extent I can agree with that. They easily could have done a better job implementing it and making it consistent with the rest of the stage. And at the end of the day, it's not really that absurd to randomly find this weird platforming challenge that's not consistent with the rest of the level. This might stick out more like a sore thumb in Galaxy than it does in other 3D Mario titles. I could be remembering this incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure Galaxy 2 is full of this kind of stuff. But I don't think this is so drastically different than having a secret area challenge in Mario Sunshine, or maybe even something as silly as a Bowser puzzle in Mario 64. But honestly, for me, what it comes down to is the actual gameplay. This is a good platforming challenge. You are dropped right into it, you gotta move as fast as you can, you don't have that much time to think. And specifically in a level like this one, I think the challenge was sorely needed. You had 3 stars that were more or less just swimming in a race, or trying to keep up with Guppy in the case of one of them. Another star that involved a search or a hunt with B Mario for 5 silver stars. So I think having a challenge like this one could liven up the mood a little bit, give you that proper platforming challenge test. Now don't get me wrong, I finished this one in one attempt, but I don't know that everybody does. And I'm sure you're all probably waiting for me to address this, but this challenge is basically stolen from Hurry Scurry Galaxy, which is a small galaxy in the fountain. Which means that most people will have already done it once, and it makes it a little bit less enjoyable. Now here's the thing. Even though this challenge is a repeated one, it's one that I enjoy and I'm glad it was included in the level. Admittedly, I'd have preferred something else, but it is what it is. The star with B Mario was pretty good, but I think the fact that it did not reward you for keeping hold of B Mario and making your way around the level is really a detriment. It could have been a very interesting star if they just required you to avoid the water altogether. So instead of being a really good B Mario challenge, it ends up just being kind of okay. And similar to the hidden star, B Mario is just a gimmick that's taken from another stage, because the power-ups in this game are more gimmicks than actual power-ups. So even then, this whole challenge doesn't feel all that unique. And then you have the 3 races, which are basically all redundant to one another. And really, it's just more swimming, and the aesthetics look the same as the beach and the penguins and Guppy and all that. So even that part of it feels kind of like it was stolen from a different segment of the game. For all intents and purposes, Sea Slide Galaxy feels like they just grabbed a bunch of scraps and threw them together. And while I feel like this stage does have its moments, there is some joy to be found, and the difficulty is not necessarily as mind-numbing as some of the earlier levels in the game. Genuinely, I think this might actually be one of the worst galaxies so far. And that's largely because nothing feels all that unique. This should have been a small galaxy. If this was a single small galaxy where you were required to use B Mario to fly around and collect all the silver stars, I think it would be one of the best small galaxies in the game. Heck, it could have had 2 stars, the silver stars as well as a race against the penguins. Or they could have just done a race against Guppy. But ultimately the Cosmic Mario race feels kind of pointless, and then having a hidden star be the same as one from earlier in the game also feels very pointless. So if I was to grab this galaxy and just give it to somebody and tell them to play it, they might have a little bit of fun at least. But when you're going through the game and you make it to this one, it feels more redundant than Honey Hive Galaxy in my opinion. And it's weird for me to say that because I don't think when I was playing it I felt like this was that bad of a galaxy. The only thing I really remembered was the redundancy of the first 3 stars. And maybe that's by design. Maybe the way that it's fleshed out and the way you travel around for the other stars makes it feel a little bit more unique. But at the end of the day, I don't think there has been a single galaxy that I've covered that felt as repetitive as this one. So while the cracks were slightly papered over for me during the experience, when I got down to the nitty-gritty and actually started to scrutinize it, I'm kind of surprised that I didn't immediately dislike it when I was playing it. I guess aesthetics could go a long way sometimes. I hate to say this, but I have a very big feeling this is going to be my least favorite stage in the game. Which is a shame because I think it has a lot to offer, it's just that everything it offers is done elsewhere. And in a lot of those cases, it's done better elsewhere. So not only are the stars themselves in the stage redundant to one another, the stage is redundant to the entire game. And really, the only saving grace here is the galaxy that's coming up next. Let's head over to Toy Time Galaxy.